Welcome to Dark Days Radio presents Darkhammer, a Worlds of Warhammer podcast. I'm one of your regular hosts, Chris, and as always, I'm joined by David. Hi, David. How's it going?
Hello, it's going quite well actually. It's a
Yeah,
Friday night, so
there's exciting things going on. I've painted my living room, or practically painted it all. I've repainted it again to the dark shade of almost black. It's this really kind of dark slate color, and it works. So I'm quite happy with that. And I've been painting.
it does look cool in the pictures.
It will look. Oh well, you've seen it when it's brown, but it's the same color we've done in the bedroom. So I'll show once it's that'll
But
be
yeah, I've
pictures.
not been in your bedroom, so I'm not gonna. I
But
can't
it's
comment.
the other thing I've been painting, and I will finish tonight is K-Knight Shadow
Okay,
Stalkers.
nice, yeah.
They're really cool models. I've done it all with contrast paints because I'm just trying to get through the backlog. Because fuck it, I'm gonna game with them. They look cool. Fuck it, just I don't
The
care.
K-Knight, they are. And what have we got released tomorrow? I know we're probably going to do this in the news, but tomorrow we've got the release of the Vampire Underworld group. And
Yeah,
I'm
they're
just
on
like,
pre-order, aren't they?
they're on pre-order tomorrow.
Yeah,
We'll talk about that in the news. Let's skip that at the moment. We'll talk about the news.
hobby-wise, then I've not been doing anything Warhammery of late gaming-wise because, of course, tomorrow night I am running
Flying
session
Kingdoms.
2 of Iron Kingdoms, which is going quite well. It's nice and refreshing. You know, good palate cleanser to prime me
Iron
for going
Kingdoms,
back
so
into Warhammer. You're still obviously running the Enemy Within campaign.
Yeah, we took a week off last week because we completely
Easter.
forgot that last week was Easter. So we're starting up again next weekend. We're coming to kind of the crux of the first book. So I reckon we've got maybe 2 or 3 more sessions till we come to the end of the first Enemy in the Shadows book. And once we've
Wow.
done that, we're obviously going to we'll take a little bit of a break and do something else, and then come back to it. We'll also next session we're going to have a new player.
Excellent.
If anybody who's keeping up, spoiler alert here. If anybody who hasn't been watching, but spoiler alert, Chris has had to step out for various reasons. So we've brought in a new player to replace Chris, and Elaine has also had to step out. So we brought in a new player to replace Elaine. So we've got Ben, who has already joined, and next time we have Fiona from What Am I Rolling joining. So fun times ahead,
awesome.
I think.
Yeah, that's
I know Fiona's character, and it is just I'm so looking forward to seeing how Fiona's character deals with everying. And
she
Ben,
had a lot of fun playing Warhammer when I ran it for her podcast.
Yeah.
So I think she's gonna live for it.
I also regret introducing Ben into Chig.
Oh no, yeah,
so
you've basically
much.
got two plebs being really plebby.
Yes, yeah. And Crystal is just sat there going, "What the fuck is happening?"
Oh,
but yeah,
God.
it's taken on a different turn, but it's still brilliant. But yeah, anyway,
what if Francesca returns at a later date to deal with these plebs?
it's yeah. You can come back at some point, or I'll bring him back at some point, and he'll just look at Klaus, and he will There'll either be a glint of pleasure or a glint of displeasure in his eyes, depending. He may be pleased or really pissed off that Klaus has taken on a new friend.
Yep. Anyway, also of interest, our friends over at Full Metal RPG have a new kind of show in their podcast episode, so you can tune into their thing, which is Realm of Fire, which again is focusing on Games Workshop IPs, role-play games and war games. It's less about it's less about what we kind of go for. It's more about hot takes and feels about the hobby in general, rather than us trying to give you insight into how to run things in your RPGs. But still, good to have a listen
Broaden
to.
your horizons.
Yep, and Brendan and the guys there are really good to listen to. Anyway, our topic this week is the loathsome Ratmen, Skaven. But before then, let's talk about news. News. We've already said Enemy Within is still carrying on. Soulbound, the campaign that they released is complete. Yeah. So that's great. There's lots of cool stuff in there. There's Skaven, there's Nurgle stuff, there's everything. And obviously that leads you into more of the and hints more at what then occurs in the Marathi Broken Realms book. So that's great. There's a new PDF about hazards and adds a hell of a lot of new. It's a very cheap little short PDF, but it's just hazards to introduce into the game, which is cool. Because
I think on that kind of front, and we'll talk about it probably more with the other games that are around, is like one of the best things I think C7 are doing at the moment is they're not churning out these massive 200-page books every couple of months. They're churning out a lot of really small little things that are like £5, so you can easily quickly pick them up, quickly scan them through, and see all these things. The Hazards book is one of them. You've got a load for Warhammer Fantasy as well. So I'm really loving this little these little primers that they're giving out. So
it's these they're basically kind of like utility PDFs. Like you pick them up and it adds something new you can immediately use in any game. It's a very nice like bolt-on, which is great. Obviously, the other big release for Soulbound was the Bestiary book, which is freaking awesome. I have to say, my God, that book is filled with literally enemies and antagonists from every faction. So you've got characteristics and profiles for free cities, all of the main order factions, every other faction, and then you've also got like animals, beasts that roam around as well. So it's chock full of stuff. And given the other release coming up soon, or coming out like hopefully this weekend / hopefully we're hoping it lands on our doorsteps tomorrow. It's allowing me to prime for running a Soulbound stream game. But before we get to that, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay has a new book out which covers Altdorf, which is awesome.
Altdorf is just. I know Crystal is, or sorry, not Crystal. I forgot what character's name is now.
Gertrude? No,
that's Mike.
Maria?
Mary. Yeah, Mary has connections to the Altdorf Underground, so I like a little bit more connection now as to what the Altdorf Underground is, because I may have set her up as a mafioso boss. So I'd love to kind of read more about that now.
So that's going to be a good kind of like sandbox book that also adds on to Enemy Within quite well, much like the Middenheim book does as well. So that's all great stuff. I think there was another PDF and I can't remember what it was. I think there's another scenario out. Again,
a lot of those really kind of small primer little books that have come out. There's been a fair.
I think it's mostly. Is it not one of the Adventures of the Uber's Reich?
There's been another one of those. There's been like the one shots book. I don't think we mentioned that before. So
then obviously Grim Harvest came out. Grim Harvest came out for Wrath and Glory, which you wrote, which completes the Litanies of the Lost campaign.
And on that note, today the update came through for all of Litanies of the Lost. So they've done their beta testing and everybody's come back with it, and so there should be an update. So for those of you who have already bought it, you've got the update coming through for all the corrections and stuff. So
there's also extra content that means it gives you more guidance on how to string them all together to create a full campaign.
And you've got Drukhari in there. I can now say it. I put Drukhari in, and I am so happy that how it was.
I was impressed how close my Drukhari for Virtual HorrorCon was to the one in the book.
Yeah, so, I was trying to not tell you at the time that they were going to be in this, and it's like, no, they're actually, you've done it right. So
it was I was pretty close. Obviously, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay as well. Horned Rat is coming. It's looming on the horizon, which I wrote for, so it's coming. I just know it's getting
book, isn't it?
Fifth.
I
think it's fifth. I forgot.
I'm completely lost. All
I lost track
at you about the books at one point during the RPG, but anyway.
And then obviously the thing that we hinted out that arrives this weekend and will land on a doorstep, and I hope it arrives at my doorstep tomorrow because it's literally had to go from Shopping Town to here. Please DHL deliver it tomorrow. Is Warhammer Quest Cursed City? Woo! Which is a Age of Sigmar Warhammer Quest game set in the realm of Shaiish, the realm of death, in the city of Ulfenkarn. So it's basically vampire hunting in the
It's
Age of Sigmar.
vampire hunting in an undead city, and it's just and some of the heroes are not exactly heroes as well, which is
No.
it is you can be a vampire hunter who is not a nice person. So
Interestingly,
much to come for it. It's just it's
if you do the maths, I think you actually have just shy of 1,000 points of undead as an army in there.
It's not quite that much. It's a little bit less, but it's basically it's so I've got a death force that is made up of Ossiarch Bone Reapers and Night Haunts. This is going to be because we've got the Gravelords book coming out soon, which is something I've got to mention. For Soulbound, we've got Soulblight Gravelords, which is the vampire skeleton zombie faction for Age of Sigmar. That's coming out, and Curse City gives you a nice little starting force for that. So my death
Yeah.
I'm going to have Ossiarchs, I'm going to have Night Haunts, I'm going to have the Skelly Bob Zombie Force, and I'm also going to get some of the what are the other ones called? Strigoi. What are they now called?
The Flesh Terror Courts.
Terror Courts. Yeah, that's the one. So I'm going to have like a 4,000 point army. That's 1,000 points of each of them.
Yeah, Legions and Nagash full on. Yeah, because I think like the heroes in Curse City come to about 608 points total. And you have to take them all as one unit.
Yeah.
As one choice. They all operate independently, but that's choice. And then you've got a unit of 10 skeletons in there and a unit of 10 zombies. And then you've got some swarms.
Just so beautiful.
So I think that does get you quite close to 1,000 points already. And it wouldn't take much to bulk it out. So I've got already
Not
like
useful 1,000 points, but it's still 1,000 points. But
I've got like 10 skeletons already, and I've got a sepulchral guard and what else? Something else. And like a necromancer and a tomb white lord. So yeah, I've now got seems like I've now got an undead army other than Night Haunts. Which means now I have a huge Night Haunts, huge Night Haunt undead army. Cool. Anyway,
you should have some Night Haunts because you got Mortal Realms, didn't you?
yeah, I've got a lot of Night Haunts. I'm gonna start painting Reichner the tomorrow to be my commander.
Yeah, I have a lot of Night Haunts, but because of the way things happened last year, and the post how it works around here, I got a lot of it sent to my work, so my university.
Oh right.
So it's all sat on my desk at university, and I'm not allowed to go and collect it. So I've probably got like 1,000 points sat unbuilt on a desk gathering dust.
Wow.
Which is pretty much how most of my hobby is, sat on a desk gathering dust. But
right. Anyway, let's talk about Skaven.
Hey, listen. Do you know your D8s from your D12s? Do you know your modifiers from your bonuses? Do you know your destiny points from your story points? Do you have any idea what I'm talking about? Either way, you should check out What Am I Rolling, a twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast. Catch up on previous episodes on the What Am I Rolling website, that's www.wairpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Remember, adventurers need not apply.
So obviously everything we say here is spoilers ahead if you are new to Skaven, but this is going to be kind of a primer to Skaven and maybe how to so this is kind of how to portray Skaven in Warhammer and in Age of Sigmar as well, because it's the same history, they're the same thing, nothing's really changed, just one led into the other. So I'm going to just start with talking about their biology and society, because they live in a society.
They do.
Right.
Quick thing, Chris, just before you go, I've noticed my Google seems to have switched my accounts. So I'm just going to mute myself and try and work things out because I've lost all the notes.
Okay.
So you carry on and I'll appear at some point.
So yes, Skaven are a humanoid rat-like creatures. They're squat, so they're hunched over, and they don't really stand more than about much more than 4 foot tall, unless you talk about the larger ones, which we call storm vermin, which have darker fur, or the greyer ones, which we call grey seers, and they have grey fur and stand taller, and may even grow horns, which leads to the interesting question: are Skaven beastmen, or are they a separate thing entirely? Obviously, within the Empire, this is a huge discussion because they don't want to admit, or it's they don't want to admit or even acknowledge the fact that Skaven are their own kind of creatures that live under the Empire. They are clearly evolved from rats. They have long tail, which is just as long as their body. They have claws. They have horrible incisor, sharp teeth, whiskers. They have a good ability to smell things. Their fur is very slick, fine, and waterproof. Their skin is also quite tough and thick, and getting tougher and thicker if they're a larger breed. Some Skaven are almost completely hairless, and there are Skaven which are pretty much in a very have a state of malnutrition because they're kept as essentially slaves. And the Skaven society is such that they'll turn on each other. It's very much rat eat rat kind of life. So their society is really barely held together by those in power. Now, Skaven breed rapidly, and they have brood mothers, who is quite gross and just represents the fact that Skaven are not nice creatures. They really aren't. I don't think there's any way to sympathize with them as a race at all. They literally cripple the brood mothers. There are very few females in their race. They cripple them. They breed with them. You get the idea. And each brood that is spawned is about 1 to 2 dozen pups, Skaven pups. And this happens 5 times a year for each brood mother, which means it is quite possible for 100 plus Skaven to be born to a single brood mother in a year. And of those,
to me, like a really small number. I'd have thought there'd have been way more than.
But I mean, think about it: 100 of them, and it sounds small, but I imagine Skaven mature bloody quickly.
Oh yeah, they certainly do. They when we get into the kind of origin story, we might hear a bit about how.
So if you've got like 1 in 10 born Skaven are likely female, that means you've got an exponential rate of growth of Skaven, assuming you've got enough food for them. And speaking of that, Skaven eat bloody everything and anything.
Yep.
They have a highly corrosive acid in their gut. Their guts are quite small, which leads to them being constantly hungry, completely voracious. But they do also grow their own food. The black corn is grown around Skaven blight, and this is corn that has a fungus, a blackened fungus that grows on it. It's a bit like the fungus on the corn that they grow in South America. That's actually a delicacy. But this is, if a human was to eat this, they'd mostly go insane, like that medieval fungus that would grow in stalks of corn. Anyway, as we said, there are larger Skaven, which we know as storm vermin. They're close to 5 foot tall. The grey Skaven, the grey seers, they generally, that's those born with that coloration. That's a sign of their genetics, their breeding, that they're also capable magic users. And they will, and going back to what they eat, Skaven will eat warpstone, which then allows them to grow bigger and also develop powerful magics and direct it. So they are really creatures of chaos. There are other forms of Skaven-like creatures that are bred, especially by Clan Moulder, who are very good at basically breeding and mutagenics and flesh crafting. Yeah. So there's rat ogres. There are giant rats. There is the really hideous thing of breeding rats with wolves to create their wolf rat creatures, and they're just foul. They're literally hairless, kind of wolf-sized rats with slightly longer limbs.
I think of like a naked mole rat, but like
it's
the size of a wolf.
Obviously they'll breed other strange things. There was like weirder creatures that came out towards the end times, like
the Hellpit Abomination and stuff.
Yeah. Like that. So yeah, you have that. And the Skaven society obviously it drives their psychology. They're always fearful of running out of resources to keep each individual alive. So that's why they're like driven to bully each other, to multiply and attack the surface. And you kind of get this kind of cycle with Skaven where they'll reach a critical mass of their numbers where they will then erupt onto the surface, decimate an area, and then they'll be repelled. And being repelled means that they'll return underground, and then their what resources and food and so forth they've captured and taken with them will run out, and inevitably they'll turn on each other. So
It's kind of like the actual traditional. If you look at biology and ecology and stuff, you have that cycle of growth of a colony and then death of a colony as it outstrips its kind of
yeah,
things. So it follows this very, very natural system. It's kind of weird for something that is so not natural that it
yeah.
these natural paths.
And yeah, as we said, they're barely bound together. There's the minor clans, then there's the major clans, and then you've got the Great Clan, and then you've got the Council of 13, which kind of barely controls this all. The Council of 13 is essentially, 12, major.
There's 12 clans.
There's 12 major Skaven that lead society, and the 13th seat is given to their god, the Horned Rat. Now, the Horned Rat is a chaos god of sorts. And we say a chaos god. I think this is an important kind of thing. Like, it is a chaos god. It's not within the pantheon of the ruinous powers. So the relationship between the Horned Rat and say Nurgle and Khorne and so forth is kind of is a bit difficult. I mean, that might even change with what we see in Age of Sigmar actually.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a different I can't even say the word. There's definitely a difference in the way that you kind of portray the Horned Rat and the chaosness of Skaven between Warhammer Fantasy and Age of Sigmar. Age
yeah.
of Sigmar, they are very, very, very much a chaos faction. They are fully associated with chaos, and they are part of the Chaos Allegiance. So you've got these grand allegiances within Age of Sigmar. Whereas in Warhammer Fantasy, it's kind of very much an offshoot side section of chaos, and it's all a bit kind of wishy-washy as to how it's connected. Whereas in Age of Sigmar, it's definitely the Horned Rat is a chaos god. It's not part of the Grand Four pantheon thing that you spoke about, but it is still very much a very, very powerful chaos god. Whereas in fantasy, he's not very powerful, despite the fact that he does do some nasty shit and basically fucks Nagash quite a lot.
Yeah,
We'll
I
come to that
mean, the Skaven, the Horned Rat's interesting because obviously the four Chaos Gods, Khorne is rage, Slaanesh is
later. No,
decadence
it's
and
disease.
obsession, Nurgle is disease and decay, and Tzeentch is chaos, is chaos and mystery and
Forbidden knowledge, I
forbidden
suppose.
knowledge and duplicitousness and so forth. So Skaven, the Horned Rat's kind of like that. Kind of has elements of
called him
some of them.
But he's also devious. He kind of sums up what the devious political backstabbing nature of things. So
I
he's
think
more
he's
like a human. He's got a lot more human tendencies, I think.
it's a
than
bit
lot-
more. I don't think that. I think more like animalistic actually in some respects. Like that just that kind of or maybe represents like society will eat itself kind of idea.
He's very much about the backstabbing and the grabbing of power in any means possible,
Mm.
isn't it? Because I see the Skaven as quite a little. When you get to the higher echelons of Skaven society, it's all about that grab of power and trying to
Oh
become
yeah.
powerful and fearful warlord there is. And so there's a lot of backstabbing going on, literal and figuratively, throughout their society. So the Horned Rat, to me, also kind of portrays that aspect, that politicking, and then eventual real backstabbing.
So the Skaven are fanatics. They believe in their god full and full. Fully through. They're devoted worshippers. Now the Skaven, of course, are completely obsessed and masters of warpstone based technology. They eat it, they snuff it, they snort it, they drink it, and they put it in their tech. And they've stolen technology and they mix it with it. So they've got warpstone based gunpowder, they've got warp lightning. They'll use it as an addition to their magic and their technology. So they're kind of like steampunk on crack. And
Crack.
yeah, and their language, they do have a language as well, is scratches, which just like kind of random and unintelligible to humans, but actually are meaningful. And their own language they speak is basically a series of squeaks, hisses, mewlings, body language, of course, with their tail, ears, and whiskers. But of course, the other really gross thing is the various emission of various pheromones and fluids. Like if a Skaven's like frightful, he'll show it by ears folding down, tail being low, and pissing itself. Like seriously, it's grim.
Yeah, there's a lot of very, in some respects, too detailed descriptions of language used in some of the literature. So
anyway, so yeah, their economy is obviously survival of the fittest, and obviously a mild form of currency in Warpstone, and society is really based around caste and clan really defining who you work for, maybe your color of your fur, and the technologies and resources you have, or where you're from in the world. Whereas caste is really about kind of what role you have within that clan. So, as we said, storm vermin are stronger, bigger, more powerful. Regular clan rats, they just do run of the mill. Then you're going to get the slaves who come from other clans and are the weaklings who are just put to work doing stuff like mining or making food or other stuff.
This is something that I feel that GW does need to look at a little bit, because if you, as you quite nicely, I'm gonna say it. GW have done something quite horrible with the way that they've created that caste system that I think needs to be looked at, and it is based upon the color of the fur. So I don't think it should.
Yeah, I mean,
when I had a Skaven army and I painted my storm vermin, they didn't have black fur as they're meant to. They had lots of different colored fur, because all rats, if you look at a colony of rats, it's all different colors. So I think it's something that needs to be addressed, and it's still very much prevalent within Warhammer Fantasy. So I'm hoping this all gets kind of redressed.
I mean,
so
let's be honest, that part of it could also be driven from a product based reason to differentiate the models on the battlefield.
So
and also within the magazines
now. So
it's very easy when you've got a field of brown rats to go, these black ones we've painted black that have got this armor, they're storm vermin, and then this guy who's grey, he's the wizard and he stands out. So I can see it from that point of view as well, from a completely
it's a horde army, isn't it? You have like 120 150 odd models on a table. It's hard to pick out the different units.
It's the same with Black Orcs. Black Orcs in Warhammer, why are they? They're called Black Orcs. They have darker skin because they're more powerful. Is that really just so they stand out on the battlefield from the rest of your orcs, which again is a
Black Orc
horde?
models are like twice the size of a normal boy. So
yeah, I think this could be addressed quite happily when they actually do new Skaven models, because the Skaven models are freaking old now.
They're almost the same age, if not maybe older than the current. I think they're actually older than the current line of Eldari.
Oh, I think so. Yeah,
like the
they go back to Mordheim. I think they go back to Mordheim.
Well, that's what they're meant to be doing with Curse City. That's the new version of Mordheim. It's just not got rats in it yet. Although there are a lot of rats in it, it's just not.
Yeah. And then the other thing to say is by being obsessed with Warpstone, Skaven are completely obsessed with trying to blow up the moon. But Morsley, that is.
Hang on, talking about blowing, you were in Manchester, the Manchester store.
I did indeed
in Lustrian cannon.
Build the warp lightning cannon, which was in Lustria, built by what's the name of the Skaven character who built it? Zingtail. Zingtail builds the gets it built, and then they defeat the lizardmen.
Yeah, we built a massive fucking 2-scale model of that in the Manchester store, didn't we? It was mental.
And it's canon. It's fucking canon.
In both senses of the word.
So that's Skaven in a nutshell, I think, as in kind of how to portray them. Oh, the other thing to say about them in society is because they're hunched and everything. It is more than foreseeable for them to masquerade as homeless people and as vagrants in the street, or just regular mutants and cultists because they're hunched over in cloaks. So Skaven actually can still quite easily hide out in the open, which I think is really fucking terrifying.
Yeah, there's when I was looking up on that kind of thing, it's like it's kind of a bit of a running joke within Warhammer Fantasy that Skaven don't exist, and it's because of this thing that because the Empire is the main kind of setting. There's kind of rumors of the Skaven and that these big rat things exist, but they do quite easily hide. And when I was kind of looking it up, it's like, yeah, the scholars know that Skaven exists within the Empire, but you look at the other city states and other kind of nationalities within the old world. Britonia just point blankly refuse to admit that they exist and have no scholars to actually kind of look into it, and so they don't know that they exist, despite Britonia being overrun by them for quite a few times. Tilia, well, Tilia know that they exist and Tilia hate them.
Yeah.
The other one. So there's this kind of weird thing with Skaven that they're admitted less that they exist than that their ruinous powers exist. So they're a weird kind of thing that they do exist but they don't exist in like the human societies.
I think it's the thing that the classic thing is like, the way we see the Warhammer world through the war game versus the role play game, because the role play game is the bits in between the big battles, and the big battles don't take place every other week, meaning the Skaven come out every couple of 100 years really. And so when they're defeated or they support another army, and so you don't notice, oh, that's Skaven, they again dwindle away into being like folklore and legend,
aren't they? Yeah. Whereas
anyway, we should talk about clans. So go on, just cover clans quickly.
We'll do this very, very quickly, and then we'll get into the origins, because I kind of when I wrote stuff, I kind of got distracted and wrote too much about one thing. We've already mentioned that the clans. So the overarching society is ruled by the Council of 13, and this is a collection of 12 actual Skaven, and the 13th place is saved for their god, the Horned Rat. They meet, from what I remember, they meet once a month in Skaven Blight, their capital city, and they can call weekly meetings to have things if need be. But it's basically a political ruling party. And with Skaven being Skaven, there's a lot of politicking going on and a lot of backstabbing with that. Most of the places on the council are made up from the strongest clans that exist within Skaven society. There's a few exceptions in there. So you've got the Seer Lord of the priests. So it's like the Grand Grey Seer who rules over their religion. He's not connected to a clan, but he's because they are absolutely obsessed with religion and their Horned Rat god. He gets given the most important seat next to the Horned Rat. You then have the Warlord General of Skavendom, who is like the most. He rules over all military aspects of the Skaven army. And then then it starts getting into kind of like the different clans and the warlords of that. So most of them are just called Warlord, but there's a couple of others who have special names. So you've got the Fleet Master of Clan Scurvy. They are literally kind of pirate rats. They're exactly what you expect them to be. They are rats on boats. You've got the Exalted Warlord of Clan Skryra, who are the ones who like to have lots of big, long, shooty guns, basically. Yep. You've got Pack Lord of Clan Mulder, so the Clan Mulder are the Flesh Crafters, and you've got Arch Plague Lord of Clan Pestilence. There's maybe some connection to Nurgle there, but it's all a bit iffy as to whether that is.
Is it Pestilin? I thought it was Clan Pestilin.
Yeah. It's all kind of are they Nurgle worshippers or not? And it's all a bit iffy. And then my favourite, you've got the Night Lord of Clan Eshin, who again maybe need a little bit of tweaking, but in the old days they were effectively ninja rats. And so within there you've got your four grand clans, which are Skryra, Mulder, Pestilence, and Eshin. These are the four biggest, most powerful clans. Underneath that you've got Pirate Skaven, Clan Scurvy. Then you've got Rictus, Moors, Scab, I think I've got that wrong. I think, is it Mordibus or Morbidus? Can't remember.
I'll check the book.
Yeah, and so you've got this, and this can change. It's not a fixed set of 13 of 12 members within there. Any rat Skaven can actually usurp a place to get onto the council, and there are two ways that they can do this. The simple answer is you have to just place your hands upon the pillar of commandments and survive. And if you survive, you become a Lord of Decay, which is basically the title you get when you become a council member. However, the Pillars of Commandment is this massive, huge warpstone, like pure warpstone structure in the council chambers that effectively causes instant death, mutation, and madness as soon as you touch it. So the chances of you surviving this are absolutely minuscule. So it's not. It may sound simple, just touch something and survive. It's actually probably harder than the other option. And the other option is you have to destroy an entire clan, basically, and then usurp its place. So
yeah, I was just looking at the clans in the second ed fantasy roleplay book. So you had the four big ones.
Yeah.
The warlord clans at the time are Clan Phlegm, Clan Moors, Clan Scab, Clan Scar, Clan Scowl, Clan Sleekit, and Clan Verms. So yeah, it changes depending upon where we are in the timeline.
Yeah,
You know, clans come and go.
The warlord clans, there's a lot of competition, and a lot of the times that these places have changed, it's through clans destroying other clans or forming alliances and molding into a bigger clan and stuff. It's very, very rarely through the first option of touching a big, scary, glowing green pillar that is basically going to destroy you from the inside out as soon as you touch it.
Cool. Right. So that's their big society. They live in a society.
They have a society of sorts.
Right. So I'm going to quickly cover a bit of origins. Then I'll go for the first one. So
Before you say, do you want me to cover the first bit because this is the bit I did and you do the war?
sure, you can do that. Yeah. Let's talk about origins.
Yeah. Because I can probably run through this quite quickly. So there's two schools of thoughts. If you kind of take the Empire view of Skaven, there's the thought that they're an offshoot of Beastmen. So they're an actual chaos faction they are humans who have mutated into rats. Or there's the other school of thought where they are rats who have mutated and evolved into men in some respect. In the Empire, though, or in like the human societies, there is only one text that kind of talks about the origin of the Skaven, and it's kind of mostly found in Tilia, as they are Skaven by Light is based in Tilia. I'll kind of talk about that city in a second, and it's from a text called the Doom of Kavzar. It's a 13 stanza poem that is actually written in a couple of books, actual books you can buy for role plays and stuff. And it is a full-on 13 stanza poem, and I'll try and run through it as quickly as possible here, giving you the main points. There was a city that was built by men and dwarfs. The men ruled the top side, and the dwarves ruled the underside. And the men had this entire Tower of Babel thing going on. They wanted to reach the heavens. And it got to this point where it kind of became impossible to complete. So one night a stranger came along. And he said he would finish the tower if he could put his own offering to his own god within the top of the tower. The men, realizing that they spent generations trying to build this thing, just like, what, you can do this in one night? Cool, yeah, do it. We don't care who your god is, and didn't ask any questions. And lo and behold, well, boom, you got a tower in one night. And at the top of the tower, this man had placed a giant horned bell. There was much rejoicing, and all the men were like, we've got this tower, and they surged into it, and they were kind of giving praise and things to their gods at the time. But at midnight, the bell began to toll. It didn't toll just once or twice, or even the 12 times for midnight, but it pealed 13 times. And on the 13th strike, lightning split the sky, and Morsleb grew bright in the skies. Obviously, men being men, they were scared of this. The poem actually says manlings, because it's all about, I think it's a dwarven poem technically. So,
yeah.
But also Skaven call men manlings. In the following morning, they awoke to find a world of dark, and a black, slick, iridescent rain had begun to fall on the streets. It rained for weeks on end. The dwarves of the city didn't really give a shit because they're underground. It's like, well, it's wet up there. It's not wet down there. We don't care. but then it began to hail and destroy the crops. So food started to become scarce for both the manlings and the dwarves, and each day grew worse than the last. Prayers to Sigmar went unanswered, and eventually the food ran out. And so, as things got really, really bad, the men kind of went, well, if praying to Sigmar and all the proper gods isn't working, maybe we should pray to the, like those dark gods, the ruinous powers for salvation. And they prayed to demon princes and the ruinous powers and malevolent forces to try and stop this torment. Yeah, but they also ignored them. But something did answer, and what that appeared to be was a swarm of vermin that struck every night, and each night they got larger than the one before, to the point where they could pull down the weak men and women, feed on them, and as they grew larger, they could pull down bigger and bigger targets. And they came every night on the tolling of the 13th bell, as each midnight it tolled 13 times. And they grew, men grew more and more desperate, and the manlings grew more desperate. They fled to the dwarven hold under the city. All they found under there was noise. The men fought to the last, but eventually they all died, and the city became lost to the Skaven. There is some thought that this is like the tale of how Skaven Blight was formed, and is kind of written as a ballad, but it is the earliest record of where Skaven came from. Skaven Blight is the capital, as we've mentioned, of their underworld, their world-spanning under empire that stretches from the World Edge Mountains all across the sea to Lustria. But Skaven Blight, nobody really knows the origins of it, other than that it currently sits on what was an old elven trading city known as Tylos, which you kind of, from that you can kind of, it creates the name of Tilia and the city states of Tilia. But nobody really knows what happened, other than for 1860 before Sigmar, Skaven came out and took over the city. And as we've said, Skaven like to populate things. They populated Skaven Blight to almost breaking point, and being scheming, power-hungry, lustful, deranged creatures, they needed ways to expand their domains. And so the Grey Seers and Sorcerers hatched this massive scheme to expand their domain under Skaven Blight. What they wanted to do was kind of extend the tunnels and kind of, so this is all at the beginning before their massive under empire. They wanted to create this under empire, so build more tunnels in a magical way rather than do it by hand. However, Skaven being Skaven, things did not go as intended, and the ritual went wrong. So yeah, they created tunnels, but they also, in the same process, destroyed the tunnels. But they also destroyed most of Skaven Blight. It collapsed the tunnels and the caves of the city underneath it, and the backlash spilled across the entirety of the old world. It shook the very foundations of the World Edge Mountains, and it destroyed most of the Everlasting Realm, which is the Dwarven Empire at the time, and it destroyed it in one night. So this massive backlash basically destroyed the dwarves, and it's now kind of known as the Time of Woe. And this is pretty much classic Skaven. They plan these big, wonderful, brilliant ideas, and then somehow they fuck it up and cause chaos and destroy themselves at the same time. So, and as we'll see now when Chris kind of goes through everything else, this is pretty much classic Skaven. Big plans.
Yeah.
It all goes wrong.
I've got some hot takes first.
Go for it.
Theory. The Skaven. Here's an idea. The Skaven are actually all mutant dwarves created by dark energy, and that the person that helped create the tower is a dark elf.
Ooh.
That would be an interesting route, because that would explain why the dwarves all disappeared. And
this was at the time when elves were all friendly with everybody.
is it? Oh, okay. Well, then that bangos that theory.
Empire kind of starts to fall, and they can't help the elves, and then you get the kind of big.
It could be. Yeah, mutant dwarves.
New dwarves would be a hilarious thing. I would, yeah, being a dwarf player and a Skaven player, I kind of like the idea.
I mean, it would possibly explain why Skaven have a propensity for dwarven technology as well, and understanding of it. That's actually, that could be quite possible. Anyway, yeah, Skaven. Obviously, yeah, there's the whole Tower of Babel kind of thing in there, which is really cool. Yeah, it's a cool little reworking of a myth. I think also it's quite interesting to point out at this point that Skaven is perhaps one of the things in Warhammer that's quite unique. I feel. I'm trying to think what.
Rats really, do you? So
no, I don't think rats in this way were in fantasy until this like Ratmen were in that point, and obviously it draws from like cartoons like Secret of Nim, kind of the imagery in that.
The only thing I kind of think of is when we did the thing for Fanboy 3 and we did the Manchester folklore thing for
Yeah.
we had the rat children under Manchester. That's kind of the thing that instantly springs to mind, but it's not something that's even within folklore is a
Yeah, it's not Tolkien anyway, that's for certain. And it's not in like Stormbringer, which Warhammer draws from a lot. Anyway, so yeah, the Skaven, they turn up and they set about doing a lot of shit.
Yeah.
As we
Skaven
said,
this
they
happened.
use their magic to cause volcanic eruptions, to sunder and devastate dwarven strongholds. They support the orcs, and that's around about 1500 years before the coming of Sigmar. They spread out further, they spread south, and around about 1300 years before the coming of Sigmar, they go south to the lands of Kemri, or just north of that, and find Cripple Peak. Now, Cripple Peak had already, I think, had Nagash set up shop there because it's this mountain with a shit ton of warpstone embedded within it because of a warpstone meteor. And obviously, Nagash is snorting and huffing a lot of this stuff to gain more and more power to become, to become this powerful, near godlike entity and use dark magics and necromancy. And the Skaven are like, we're going to have that. And they have a massive war over it. And eventually, the Skaven go for a different tact, which is they get an assassin, right? They get an assassin, not one of their own though. No, that would be insane. No, they turn to they turn to I think, is it Alcadiza the Conqueror? Is it him? I'm trying to remember who the death of Nagash. I'm trying to remember who it is. I think it's Alcadiza. Anyway, so there's a prince or king of Kemri who
I would say go listen to our episode where we talk about that because we probably actually mentioned.
we've probably already covered it. But the point is that Nagash has got this imprisoned Kemri lord with him, who's human, and the Skaven just sneak in and give this guy a warpstone blade, like the type of blade which would kill any other Skaven if they were using it. And they let him out, and
Nagash.
And he goes along and kills Nagash for them, which is great. Classic Skaven.
Classic Skaven. We see this maybe repeated through.
Yeah.
Often, I don't know. I can't.
Because I think Nagash was on the precipice of like performing his great ritual or something when this happened.
He was. I think it was at the start of his power. He was learning to become immortal. So at the time, it was not where we will later talk about, because this may or may not repeat itself multiple times. So he's not trying. It's not the godhood part of it. It's the I'm now learned how to be immortal, not the god. So it's like, can we actually kill him? Skaven idea is he mortal or not?
Yeah, and so yeah, Nagash, has to obviously reform within his black pyramid. And the Skaven then go, great, and mine the absolute fuck out of Cripple Peak. Meanwhile, the orcs having fun with Carrick 8 Peaks, and of course, the Skaven are once more helping out with that. And then around about 400 years before Sigmar, the Skaven are establishing an under empire where the empire will in the future be. The dwarves also around about this time learn that Skaven have stolen some of their tech, namely gunpowder. 100 years before the coming of Sigmar, Nagash is back, returns to Cripple Peak, returns to Nagahizar, and finds, where's all my warpstone? And in one night, Nagash murders the entire of Clan Rykek, who are based there. Murders every single Skaven, which is
impressive feat, as we've mentioned. There's a lot of fucking Skaven,
which is absolutely insane, and you just got to love it. So yes, and and then around about 15 years before the coming of Sigmar, or at least before Sigmar becomes before the coming of the Empire, actually, really, the Dwarf King Kurgan is kidnapped by the Skaven, traded to the Orcs for Warpstone, and of course he's later rescued by Sigmar, and Sigmar gets his lovely hammer.
That's kind of the connection where you get human and dwarves, or like the dwarves owe the humans that whole bridges things and where it will start.
So yes, after that, then they Sigmar defeats a massive Skaven horde at the Middle Mountains. 100 years later, the year 100 in time of the Empire, the Skaven's assassins who've been training in Cathay come back, and so Clan Eshin is back now with ninjas, basically. And they set about trying to take control and murder a lot of clan leaders in the process, which is just not good. Clan Pestilin in the year 200 comes to prominence by killing many, making many plagues, and killing one of the lords of plagues. So Clan Pestilin take out Nurglich, who's the leader of one of the clans at the time, and just murder him and take charge. Then the Skaven are on and off doing lots of shady dealings with orcs, screwing over the dwarves. There's a few raids and stuff. And then where it really gets interesting is once we get closer to current time. So one in the year 1110, Lord Vilna of the Drakvold is assassinated, which sparks a civil war. A year later, the Black Plague is unleashed and the Skaven emerge, and that causes a shit ton of trouble for the Empire. It's pretty much divided. There's also no emperor at the time. Well, no, there is an emperor who gets killed. So Emperor Goldgather is killed. He has no successor, so that's really bad. As the Black Plague is still rampant, and then Skaven do something stupid as always. They
have grand plans and they always fuck it up by doing something.
They piss off the undead again. They go to invade Sylvania, and of course they meet vampires, which is always fun.
And then this is one of the wonderful things about Skaven, and you'll see when we kind of come to the end times. They manage to unite random forces against them.
Yeah,
but they also join random forces as well. They're literally just they'll piss off anybody and fight with anybody. There's no logical sense in what they do.
No, exactly.
So
Count Manfred of Middenheim rallies the Empire, drives away, gets crowned emperor, and then in the year 1152, he's assassinated by the Skaven in revenge. Typical. The Skaven obviously are involved in the in the intervening years. They're spotted in Cathay, Araby, Tillier, further afield in Lustria. They're everywhere. In the year 1666, Clan Skara perfect the warp fire. Brilliant. Good for them. 1707, Skaven aid Gorbad Ironclaw and cripple Nuln from the inside. 1786, they unleash the Red Pox on the Bretonnians, which also spreads to Tillier. And in 1812, the Skaven attack and destroy quite a few cities in Bretonnia and siege the city of Quenelles. And then an alliance is formed with the elves, and they turn back the Skaven. 1941, Clan Scab ally with the Tomb Kings, which is insane, and get some new magic.
Anybody who's there to take their assistance, and then
that's completely mad.
But whatever.
I mean, they've got a shared enemy, which is the Gash, right? Of course, 1999 is classic party time for the Skaven because Mordheim has a Warpstone meteorite hit it, so they rush to it to take as much Warpstone as possible. So that's great. 2302, Magnus the Pious, of course, is around waging his war against Chaos. And weirdly, the Skaven have divine intervention, having summoned the Horned Rat, who lays out his new scheme. And this involves actually helping the Empire defeat the forces of Chaos in certain places. So the Skaven are complete assholes, even towards the other Chaos gods.
Don't care, do they? They're just like, fuck it. We'll as long whatever our God says we'll do. We don't really care. Fight with you against you.
yeah, 2320, they burn half the ships in Marienburg, and they've got their own like under empire there and settlement in the marshes and under the city. 2377, the Skaven are like one of the Skaven is made like advisor to the Emperor of Cathay, which is again insane. And then that pretty much gets us to present day where they're trading lots of warpstone for power. With various people who are idiots for even wanting to work with the Skaven. And there's some stuff in End Times which pretty much is
It's pretty
fucking
much
up Nagash's plans again.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly what you said, but kind of condensed into about 20 years of Warhammer history. They side with every side except Nagash, where they accidentally somehow gain access to the Black Pyramid at the point where Nagash is about to gain godhood, and they want to just randomly steal shit, and they randomly start stealing shit from the Black Pyramid, which causes Nagash's godhood scheme to go to shit.
Ooh, what a surprise. Which leads us into Age of Sigmar, right? If you want to just cover this.
Yeah, very, very quickly, Age of Sigmar. It's pretty much exactly the same shit. They have this massive under empire that with Age of Sigmar running across realms, and you needing realm gates to kind of transfer between realms. Obviously, Skaven are not going to want to do it the usual way because they don't want to be seen. They're very much a sneaky, underground, hidden kind of thing. So what they're able to do is they're able to build machines that tunnel through the realms. So rather than actually using these realm gates that most cultures will use and most races will use, they're actually able to tunnel through the cosmology between the realms. And again, what we see here is in very, very let's try and copy things we've done before. Story aspect of GW and create an overarching story for Age of Sigmar as we get the time of the Malign Portents, where Nagash has a plan to try and seize all the magics from all the realms and bring an everlasting death to all the realms. So everlasting life to everybody as he sees it, but effectively everyone dies and you become a zombie or a skeleton. And he builds, again, a black pyramid. This time it's upside down, but it's built out of pure realm stone that he has brought from the edge of the realm of Shaiish. And it's in the center of Nagashizar, which is in the direct center of Shaiish itself, which I find pretty weird because the realms are technically meant to be infinite in scope. But anyway, so we've got the Skavens who are able to tunnel through the realm, and they are trying to tunnel into Shaiish to join one of the great battles that is happening as Sigmar and the Orcs and the Deepkin and the Dwarden and things. They're all trying to kind of stop Nagash from doing this really bad thing. And the Skaven kind of just went, let's join in, and they accidentally burrow into the Black Pyramid again. And the lone clan Eshin, not clan Eshin because the clans don't technically exist in the traditional sense of the word. A lone assassin is left in the tunnels, and he's kind of just wandering around, and he just wanders around and sees these shiny crystals in the wall, and he decides he wants to nick them, and so he nicks these crystals that are in the wall, and this just so happens to be at the apex of Nagash's grand plan to turn all of the realms into the realm of death, and he caused the ritual to fail, and the ritual failed. And this causes the massive necroquake and the beginning of the Soul Wars, which is where the current situation is in the Age of Sigmar universe. Nagash is basically raging war over everything, but Broken Realms is the new kind of lead up to the next storyline. So we're starting to see a change here. So basically, it's kind of a mini condensed version of the End Times, but in an Age of Sigmar kind of grander setting. And now they're moving on from that. And I'm hoping within Broken Realms that they're not going to pull the same trick. We're seeing it very differently. We've got Teclis has turned up. We've got the new Souls graveyard, Soulblight graveyards, or whatever they're called, Grave Lords, who are effectively a new vampire army. So I'm hoping we're going to see some kind of moving on with that. But also, the other major thing within Age of Sigmar, I mentioned it before, is they are now a Chaos Pantheon. The Horned Rat is definitely a Chaos God. Even though their tactics and the way they think is very much kind of more, to me, a destruction force. They're literally pure mental, go out and just do weird shit kind of thing. But there's a malevolent intelligence behind what they do. So they're kind of more connected to chaos. As you've written, yeah, Thranquil. survived somehow because Thanquol is fucking mental. But also his arch enemy survived, as again, and our erstwhile mental killer dwarf has survived. So I'm expecting to see a nice meltdown with Thanquol and Gotrek. But
It's
yeah,
interesting.
that's kind of Age of Sigmar.
Skaven. It's interesting
It's very much
how
yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to say it's interesting how they're the least changed of all the factions from Warhammer
Yeah,
to Age of Sigmar.
it's also it's not just in the kind of like history, it's also in the models. They really need to change some of those models, update some of them.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is obviously they're quite. It's because they were of everything in Warhammer Fantasy. They're the most distinct in terms of intellectual property.
There's no IP issues with other kind of fantasy worlds, is there?
No. Yeah, but yeah, Skaven fucking over Nagash is just classic, completely brilliant.
One of the things that I've always wanted, especially now we've got this whole like the Age of Sigmar setting, and we've got Sky Pirate dwarves. I really want to see Sky Pirate Skaven. I really want to see in the skies with flying ships. That
I don't know if they've got the propensity to fly them.
they only occasionally fly, obviously, and it's just like you spend most of the game trying to keep them, and then you just dive onto things and let them die that way.
So, okay, how do we use them in our games? Right, obviously, protagonists is and antagonists is the main thing. Skaven are schemers. You likely won't see them directly initially in your stories. I think it's always good to keep them lurking in the background. You will note that within definitely in certain books and stuff upcoming, it's always been in the classic books anyway. There are also human cults to Skaven. Humans will sharpen their teeth and try to be more Skaven-like. They see Skaven as something above them, or there's cults who are stupid enough and barter with the Skaven and for power, rather than going to the ruinous powers.
Within Warhammer Fantasy, you could get this dumb trader from somewhere in the Empire who is trying to make it big and kind of gets caught in the wrong deal with some Skaven quite easily.
So, yeah, definitely I would have Skaven, as we said, they can easily hide in plain sight in some respects. Hide in the background, they're good assassins. They could be hired by other parties, working for Chaos cults or working for, I guess, also working for orcs, maybe, or beastmen.
I think that's the thing. They will work with anybody as long as it means. I don't think they're afraid to use anybody for their own means.
Yeah. I think they would be for a comedy of errors type thing. I think it would be always worthwhile for having Skaven to go your Skaven antagonist to inadvertently go up against the undead. And that might be a very good way of actually having a story where the Skaven are the main bad guys and your player characters have to ally with the undead.
And again, that's something you see. You see this in Age of Sigmar and Warhammer Fantasy. Humans and the Empire will side sometimes with certain factions of the undead.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think actually. I was just thinking. I don't think Skaven when they die. I don't think their bodies are actually the best source of skeletons for undead, because I think they're just too warped to the powers of the horned rat. The other things, they're not going to form ghosts. So I don't think their soul. I think their souls are already bound to the horned rat, which is why mostly Nagash has no fucking interest in them.
Yeah, there's a whole thing in Warhammer Fantasy about why you don't see anything other than human skeletons. It's dwarves don't believe in magic and have no connection to that thing, so there are no souls and bodies for them to rise up. Skaven and Chaos people are already connected to a god, and the undeath powers can't unbind them from those places. So there is a thing in that. It's a little bit less true within Age of Sigmar.
Skaven bones, though, mostly get eaten by other Skaven. That's the other thing.
That's the other thing. Yeah, no bodies.
Nothing's left behind. Bastards. Horrible.
I think with Skavens in RPG is I think one thing that could be really fun, which could really mess with your players, is the fact that, as you've seen here, Skaven, they have these grand, wonderful plans that they make, and you are trying to stop one of these grand, wonderful plans. You might not know it's Skaven, but when you kind of get to that crux point, Skaven being Skaven, they'll fuck it up.
Yeah.
you can bring them into this grand conspiracy thing, and then at the end, and just cause absolute fucking mayhem, and have the plan go wrong, and then see how your players deal with it. I
Yeah.
think that could be quite a fun thing to play with.
They're also a good bait and switch involving anything to do with mutants and beastmen and creatures of chaos, especially when you have people of the Empire having to go into the sewers and chase after things. You could easily have a Skaven antagonists turn up, and again, you can be kind of like, well, you don't really see what it is, and again, leave that.
Nothing scary down in them there sewers. Just ask Klaus and Eric. They're perfectly happy with going down into the sewers and chasing voices that they hear in the sewers.
But you definitely can have that element of doubt about what's in the sewers. The other important thing with using an RPG is also remember is that Skaven are wonderful, wonderful route for in your stories to really make use of all the disease rules within Warhammer or Age of Sigmar, because of course Skaven are just loathsome disease-carrying pests, and so those wounds, what you think is that a flesh wound, can become quite necrotic.
Been nipped on the ankle. Oh, I'm all right. It's just a nip on the ankle. It's like no, it's gangrenous leg falling off nastiness.
I think also, and as you put in the notes, I think play-wise, you can go from really that whole thing of like, oh, it's that one or two sneaky little buggers out there, assassins, spies, saboteurs, and tainting the well water or whatever. But then as your campaign or whatever you're running goes on, you can ramp up to it's a full fucking horde of Skaven, right?
You've come across an entire clan, a small clan of Skaven that just so happens to be thousands of clan rats running around. Clan rats are things that are easy to kill, but they're usually led by something a lot bigger and scarier. So you can certainly scale Skaven so well.
And I think the other thing then that's important about them is actually their society is a dark reflection of human society.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing, because it's like, we have certain morals about working together to benefit each other, to build a society, to work in harmony. And they're just none of that. They're each out for themselves, yet together out to eat everything. And that's just completely the opposite of humanity.
Weirdly for me, within the Warhammer, especially within the Warhammer Fantasy universe, not so much in Age of Sigmar, because there's not really enough about them in Age of Sigmar at the moment. But in Warhammer Fantasy, to me, they are probably the most terrifying race that exists.
Oh yeah,
because it's that underground, hidden, unknown terror.
Yeah.
The Chaos Gods, they're very, very distinct. Khorne is going to rip your head off. Nurgle's going to make you rot to death. Slaanesh is going to pervert you to death. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And Tzeentch is just going to warp your mind, and you're going to be on a space trip to hell. Whereas Skaven is like, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how you're going to die. You don't know when it's going to happen. And it's just that horrible, scratchy, clawy sound at the back of your mind. And at some point it will kill you, and you just don't know how or when. To me, there's a lot more horror within Skaven than there is to a lot of other stuff within fantasy. So
I think there's definitely, horror of rats is obviously, I think it's baked into us as humans anyway, because it's the same kind of thing about, how we feel about certain insects and so forth. It's just kind of that primal fear of disease carrying creatures
as well. So there's that connection there. Anyway, you've put something here, and I onto this, and we were talking about this earlier.
You could play as Skaven. Now, I've got here, sat next to me, is Children of the Horned Rat, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, 2nd edition. So obviously, you can still get hold of these books as PDFs, so you can find it on eBay, obviously. You have got advanced schemes for all the basic careers. You could be an apprentice gracier, you could be a black Skaven, you could be a clan rat, you could be a pack master, you could be a slave. So basically, there is a section of this book. The end part of the book is creating Skaven characters and playing as them, right? So that's interesting, and I'm sure Age of Sigmar Soulbound will have rules at some point for playing Skaven in the Chaos book when they do it. But I think you've got to be in the right mindset because, first of all, you're going to be playing some of the most horrific creatures going in the game.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a nice game. They are going to claw you're going to eat humans at some point. I think that has to be said. You're going to eat a person, um, or other
I would say,
Skaven.
I would say think about it like you're going to be playing a Drukhari from Warhammer 40k, but it's going to be a lot fucking worse. It's
Yeah,
not going to be this overarching political thing where people stab each other bloodily in the back. That's going to be your everyday, hour by hour life. And then there's going to be other weird shit and nasty shit that's happening within it. So
it's going to be pretty foul.
yeah,
I
it
think
could also within the same thing be absolutely hilarious because Skaven always fuck up.
yeah, and this is why I say it's kind of like a really dark like Sabbat game in Vampire, or playing really a game that's all about, but where PvP is open season. Like
Yeah.
you are going to likely
I would
kill
say
other player characters.
I think Morkborg would work quite well. The idea behind Morkborg would work quite well with Skaven because again, that's it's a very dark, twisted world in Morkborg and a very dark fantasy where pretty much anything goes and you're out for yourself. And the only reason you've got people around you is because you can use them to move up in your own standings and stuff. So I think Morkborg could like that kind of setting could work quite well as well.
There's going to be basically a lot of dark comedy and humor because Skaven are kind of funny. But the thing is, remember that Skaven are equally horrific, if not more so, than they are funny. And
I'd happily run a game of it, but it would have to be with the right players.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
where we've all worked together to kind of define our boundaries
yeah,
as to what we
definitely.
can do with it. So
And I mean, you can. I would say also because we were talking about brood mothers. I actually think I was just like thinking like you could mostly be kind of gender non-specific with Skaven as well because you're just a Skaven. There's a difference between if you're a Skaven that can breed and a Skaven you're not able to breed, just due to the fact that you might just have your parts just don't work because you're Skaven. Shit happens. You're weird mutant
you're a
Skaven
space
people.
marine, you're asexual, you're a space marine rat man.
But yeah, it would be a very horrific, bloody, funny, but bloody and brutal game. By all means, think about it, explore it. I wouldn't know where quite to begin writing a scenario, but I think the whole point would be you have to allow players to turn on each other. Though, I
Yeah.
mean, if you can come up with a good reason that they don't turn on each other, then that's better, I think, and then actually it's more about how they plan as a group to backstab everyone else and eat them.
So, I think it's that Morkborg idea that you are at some point going to plan the backstab, but that's going to happen after the game has finished. And
Oh god, you're all just Skaven born from the same brood mother. There you go. That's your group template.
Yeah.
Ugh.
You're all together. You've been thrown into the same caste system and the same, maybe the warrior group or something. You're kind of trying to have to survive, going through a series of trials to make sure that you do survive the first few weeks of your life. Actually, thinking about that, there is actually this is a weird thing. There's an RPG, I forget its name, where you are playing effectively Gretchen or Grots as they're now called, or what are they called in fantasy now? Gits. Where you are born in an orc encampment, and the entire idea of the game is you survive the day without being eaten by orc because you're a goblin in an orc encampment.
I think James has that
That kind of
RPG. It's goblins in the kitchen, and you basically randomly generate new goblins so they die in humorous ways in the kitchen, which we really need to play at some point.
You could use that kind of idea with Skaven to some extent.
Yeah.
I think make it that side of it rather than the other dark side of it.
Yeah,
Like
it's
horror.
now as for other things to do with Skaven in games, if we're looking at the old world, obviously depending upon where you set it as well, Skaven will be maybe more prominent than you would think. So if you're setting it in Talir, you can really make Skaven more of a thing, and Skaven would work into the politics of various other city states of Talir because it's that Venetian kind of scheming and vendettas that works really well. Stalia to Cathay obviously has you could go for a really cool vibe with that kind of crouching tiger, hidden Skaven.
I think Skaven would work really well in those stuff. Because we've got Horned Rat coming out soon for Enemy Within, and they're quite a well-established system and idea within the Empire. But if you look at Bretonia, Estalia, and Tilia, and Cathay, and Araby, and stuff like that, I think there's a lot more scope as to kind of how you can use them, actually interact with it.
I mean,
I would definitely look to.
They're definitely a fun enemy. They make a great antagonist if you're playing a game of Warhammer where you're the Chaos Cultists. Because they're the other bad guys.
Is the bad guy of the bad guy my better?
No, they're not your friends. These are never your friends. Never trust a Skaven.
I wasn't saying is the enemy of my enemy my worst enemy or my not so worst enemy? Which one is less likely to kill me first?
If I was playing a Warhammer cultist to like Tzeentch or something, I'd sooner sell out like another human cult than barter with Skaven.
Oh god, yeah.
Fuck the Skaven. So that's, I think the take home is Skaven are gross, Skaven are terrifying. They're funny, but they're still completely gross.
And they'll stab you in the back at any given chance that they can.
And I think they have a really good element of that uncanny valley meets disease meets mutation in a weird way.
I think that's actually a key point you've hit on there, the uncanny valley, because there is some, I think I mentioned it in the Discord at some point. To me, there is something very human about the Skaven.
Yeah, that's the dark mirror to our society. That dog things, like, they're just gross.
Uncanny valley, but yeah, gross.
Anyway, right.
Beady eyes.
That brings us to the end of this episode. If you like what we were talking about, have any other insight into Skaven or what you would do with them, you can email us.
Skaven run game.
Yeah, you can email us at darkdaysradio@gmail.com. You can find us at Twitter, on Instagram at darkdaysradio. You can find us on Facebook. You can join us on Discord. You can follow our games on Gehenna Gaming and on Darker Days Radio. So we've got Warhammer and Iron Kingdoms and other games, and you can see YouTube stuff. We've got new events being planned. I'm in process of planning some stuff for online events, because that's what we do.
Well,
so I think that's pretty much everything for this episode.
A long tour of grossness.
Yeah. So thank you for listening to Dark Days Radio, and and Darkhammer, and we'll see you next time. So goodbye.
Goodbye. See you later.